It's wonderful to be here again with you, Your Holiness, at UBC, at the University of British Columbia, and to share with you some of the work that is happening here. What you might not know, you will have an honorary doctorate from here, is that this institution is actually one of the leaders in the world in understanding early child development through science. And there are a number of places in which we are leading. In fact, for example, in the Faculty of Education, we now have a social and emotional learning teacher education program so that teachers will go out and use this idea of educating the heart, as well as a graduate program that focuses on social and emotional learning. So students can come from all over to learn about how you can do this in schools. But I'm also going to talk with you a bit about other areas of which we're doing research. And one of these in which I'm working in right now is called the Human Early Learning Partnership at the University of British Columbia. And the Human Early Learning Partnership was founded by a very prominent population health researcher named Dr. Clyde Hertzman. And you met Clyde actually in 2006 and 2009 when you were here, and he was on the panel with you. Since that time, unfortunately, Clyde has passed, and we continue to carry on his mission of really trying to understand the early years and the impact. Through the Human Early Learning Partnership, it's an interdisciplinary research unit, so researchers from all over campus come in, from neuroscientists to biologists to psychologists to sociologists, to all work together to do the science to understand what are the ways we can create the best lives for young children to thrive and flourish. And one of those ideas is something by the creation of something called the Early Development Instrument that teachers complete on children entering kindergarten in British Columbia. And right now, there are over, we've collected data from over 200,000 children across British Columbia, looking at things like social and emotional well-being. And we in fact create maps so that you can see across neighborhoods how children are doing on these dimensions of school readiness as social competence, emotional maturity, as well as language and cognitive skills. But what has really happened in the past couple of years that is really quite groundbreaking is that HELP, in partnership with the Dalai Lama Center for Peace and Education, has created something called the Heart-Mind Index. And I talked with you a bit about this yesterday, but it actually is a way to look at taking these items from this early development instrument and reconfiguring them so that it focuses specifically on children's social and emotional well-being, or education of the heart. So looking at things like compassionate and kind, solving problems peacefully, getting along with others, alert and engaged, and calm and secure. And what's so interesting about this is, again, we can map all of the neighborhoods and engage families and educators and community members to try and see how their children are doing so that they can engage and move to action to create the conditions through science, informed by science, to know what they can do to create a better life for children. Now, one thing I'd like to share with you about some of our findings is that, interestingly, when we look at socioeconomic status, that is, which neighborhoods are poor or those that are wealthy. Now, one might think initially that those environments, those neighborhoods in which there are poor, the children would be lower on every dimension, and those neighborhoods that have wealthy parents and wealthy communities, the children would be higher. But that's not been the case. We actually find that some of the poorest neighborhoods have children who are high in compassionate and kind, high in solving problems peacefully, and so on, and that some of the wealthiest neighborhoods actually have children who are lower on those dimensions. So we're not finding a relationship really always consistent through how wealthy you are and how you have these positive human qualities. Now, what I'd like to do in part of this is us learning from you of what, we think about the early years. And I will have to say, you are a very compassionate and kind human being. Would you guys agree? And we want to know from you about your early years, particularly your mother. What educated your heart? What helped you become the compassionate and kind person you are today?
I don't know. I think normal way. As I always tell you, yesterday also I mentioned, our mother, illiterate, uneducated, not very rich. At the same time, I think not very, very poor. Just one removed villages. That was a farmer's mother. Then, I think we may say, I think that the family, the economic condition, the between rich and poor belongs to poor. You see, maybe the source of happiness is human love. Perhaps richer families, children, other things, including toys and these things.
Facilities.
Facility. So, even I think the rich family, I think in Tibet, one day in Delhi, one Raja, because of the small kingdom, before independence, there are many small kingdoms. One Raja, I know him very well since 1956. So one day in Delhi, actually I think interfaith sort of meeting. One Muslim, one Christian, one Hindu, he as representing Hinduism, then me. Then I express half teasing him, the Raja, the king. I come from poor family. You, the king's family. So as far as sort of mother's affection is sort of feeling or experience is concerned, perhaps I got more. My mother always carrying me on her shoulder. Even she went to work in field and look after animals. She carried me. She is so much kind to me. So eventually I become a little bit spoiled, I think, why. So she always carried me on her shoulder. So then I feel I can control my mother. So you see, I hold my mother for 2 years. When I want to go this side, other side. If mother not follow that, then so I teach, you see, my long-time friend, because the Maharaja, as far as sort of receiving the maximum mother's affection, I think poor boy had more sort of more fortunate to receive more. The Raja, I think he looked after by Mama's kare.
Maids.
So mother, his own mother, you see, may not give you see, milk regularly or often. And I don't think, you see, mother, the queen, carry, I don't think. So I teach him. I come from poor family. You come from a very, very high sort of rich family or high sort of status. But as far as human affection is concerned, I receive more. So I think you see, could be the family poor, then there's not much other thing to provide their children except genuine affection. Maybe, of course, you need further research. That's better. This is what then I think, as my friend Kasa Virichen has mentioned, it's my interest about science. Firstly, I think now, perhaps I think I may explain this way. In my home, she received maximum sort of affection from other, as a family member, and particularly my mother. So the development of brain, I think, every sort of potential, I think, properly developed, open. Where the family or children who received less affection, then their life, some kind of daily routine, or worst thing, a little bit sort of fear, I think very bad for proper development of their brain, I think. Having fear is something
it's very constricting. Anxiety.
Full of joy, no fear, open. That also I think you need. I have no ability carry research. You should take research these things. Then I think education, the Tibetan monastic, bigger monastic sort of education system. There's very much emphasis reasoning. And then important sort of text which we learned, wrote by great Indian, the Buddhist master, but actually these are great thinker, philosopher, and a great logician. So every point, when they point out, through reasoning, everything by reasoning. That also, because you see, one important text, Buddhist text, is mentioned. The Buddha himself expressed, "O my follower, monks, scholars, should not follow or accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation and experiment." So some of these great Indian thinkers even reject some Buddhist teaching. The particular teaching goes against reasons. Then these took the liberty, reject.
It makes distinction between the provisional meaning of a particular statement versus the definitive meaning.
So, I think in early teenage, then actually not much interest for study. I'm really very, very lazy student. I always prefer play and holiday. Never pay sort of serious attention about study. Then about age 11, 12, then start more sort of seriousness for study. So this logical approach, and plus since childhood, always a curiosity. If something new things you see, I always develop the question, why, how, always happen. So to combine the pattern of the study, use logic, reasoning. So then gradually you develop interest about science. And some small sort of was today, because some of the
Toys.
can just move. So I play for a short moment, then I often just open how it works. Not car, big car. Some small things. Then one movie projector which belongs to 13th Dalai Lama, like that car belongs to 13th Dalai Lama. You see, so quite, because it's quite old, so quite often you see breakdown. So then one old Chinese monk, who also you see, come from Peking with 13th Dalai Lama. So very good monk, wonderful monk, very simple, good monk. He acting like movie projector.
Like a technician. Yeah.
Or technician. So he supposed at that time, say among us, he most effective expert about that. So with him, I should start some sort of repair or these things. Then I develop electricity.
Interest.
Small dynamo produce electricity, and begin to sort of realize AC, DC, how it work, these things, how it develop these things. So more and more sort of interest about true mechanic thing, then develop about science. Then after 1954 and 55, when I visited Peking to participate some sort of official meeting like that. Beside that, Chinese government arranged a visit a number of factories or place, and then each place they show us the factories. No, I think too long. Okay. So in any way, I developed interest, this huge hydropower. Oh, really? And then also those big factories, which because of the
steel works.
Oh. Then 59, because of the political situation and very difficult circumstances, then I escaped, come to India, 1959. So then I found opportunity meeting with scientists. Then gradually, you see, after more than 20 years, then you see actual sort of serious effort discussed with scientists. Then last over 30 years, we actually developed Kasati, a Mind and Life institution. So then regularly, you see, having this sort of meeting. Our main discussion 4 fields. Cosmology. Buddhist text also is mentioning about these things. But some are go against this modern
modern understanding of cosmology.
So then I took the liberty to reject some of these Buddhist sort of concept about cosmology. I think first casualty is Mount Meru. Now I don't know. Then neurobiology. Here also you see, I say, okay. Then third, physics, particularly quantum physics. Many similarities. One of this school of thought, you see, they consider things does not exist by objectively. It's quite similar. The particle was serving
when you try to understand the actual nature of the physical world at its constitutive level, ultimately you don't really find something that withstand your objective analysis.
So here quite interesting. Therefore, in Buddhist sort of different school of thought, one school of thought, once try to find out the reality, you can't find. So then develop mind-only school of thought. Some Westerners, among the Western thinkers also, you see, they have that kind of sort of similar views. Then psychology. So as a result, now, over 30 years, it's an immense mutual benefit to us. The scientific sort of explanation on their knowledge about the subtle physics of these things and cosmology is very, very helpful. Then, to them, the ancient Indian psychology and including Buddhist psychology, quite detailed, amazing sort of explanation or knowledge about mind, about emotion. So that modern scientists really showing interest and learning from that. So after 30 years experience, it is really mutually beneficial. The emotions of these things, scientists also, you see, have the experience, but their knowledge very limited. So
sometimes one feels that there is a tendency in the modern scientific approach that you obsessively focus on what is outside you, but at the expense of understanding what is inside you.
So the scientists, great scientists, sometimes they're also facing some problem about their emotions. So the modern science must develop further, not only sort of knowledge about external things, but also including internal world. That means consciousness. Of course, the brain specialists, they have quite sort of remarkable knowledge about the system of our brain or neuron, these things. But still, a lot of sort of dark place, they do not know. So still big questions, they do not know. So it's really, as a sort of science, must develop, must further develop. Here, some ancient Indian psychology, knowledge of psychology, I think really very, very helpful. So the number one, the science itself now has all
So the first objective is to really expand the scope of science itself so that it becomes both broader as well as deeper.
The second purpose is, you see, just mere knowledge. I think the very purpose of scientific research is ultimately for benefit for humanity, benefit for world. This is not
So it's not simply a kind of a play or speculation.
And then the worst thing is scientific knowledge quite often used for destruction. Very sad. More scientific development, more fear. That's, I think, absolutely wrong. So, in the scientific sort of world, the world of science, or eventually to the scientist, you see, it's quite important. There also is a need, some kind of moral principle. Two things. Carry research about science, no application, right or wrong. Simply what's truth, what's the reality, seeking, find out the truth. Then implication, like atom nuclear physics, wonderful. But the implication, then used for destruction.
Application.
Application. Like that. So here, to genuine scientists, if you tell them, about moral ethics based on religious faith, then they may not much interest or much effective. So through scientific way, these moral principles, then it is because of that very fit.
Very fit, Lama.
So this. So now, I received sort of a lot of evidence from scientific research about the importance of calm mind. Calm mind brings inner peace. So eventually, that very helpful for our physical health. So when I give talk about secular ethics, I never touch religion, including Buddhist psychology. I never touch. Simply use common experience, common sense, and the scientific evidence. So very, very helpful, like that. So through that way, we can, make some kind of bridge connection. The modern science, and through ancient Indian psychology, then also including the value of moral principle. So that's the background. So still, in spite my age, now nearly 80 years, but still I consider myself as a student, like this young student. And me personally, when I sit with young people, I also feel a little bit younger. when I meet face to face an old lady or old sort of gentleman, then in deep corner where, you go first, or me go first. So I really enjoy meeting this kind of meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Your Holiness, for sharing those insights. Right now, we have a new president at UBC who's canvassing the whole community for the ideas about where to take UBC into the future. And I've just taped your remarks because neuroscience and physics and all the subjects that we hold dear means so much to you, and we'll encourage him to put more money into those areas as he takes UBC into the 21st century. So thank you for the support. Thank you. On a more serious note, I'd like to introduce the second of our speakers, Professor Hillel Goldman. Hillel is a professor in the Department of Education and Counseling Psychology, but recently he's moved to a position that actually picks up on another of the comments you were making. He's now the director of the interdisciplinary study program at UBC. And what you were talking about was interdisciplinary studies. And also you were reminding us that the translation of science into an impact on society is also of immense importance. So Hillel has first-hand knowledge of both of those issues because he looks at the impact of early childhood care programs and the impact that they have on not only the individual child, but on society as a whole. Very interdisciplinary, very practical, so I'd invite him to share some of his ideas with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony. Your Holiness, it's a great honor to be part of this conversation. And very briefly, I want to tell you about 2 research projects that we're doing on very young children, which really do help with the education and care of young children and make a difference. One is a study of young children who, when they're born, are taken directly to hospital because they're very sick. These are children who are premature, low birth weight, they might have a disease, they might have a genetic condition, and it used to be, as recently as 20 years ago, most of these children died in the hospital because they were so sick. The medical science now is so good that most of those children now stay alive. That's the good news. But the challenging part for us is those children have many disabilities. It's very hard for them to grow and develop. Well, our research has shown that when they do what we call early intervention programs, it might be a problem with language or social development or motor development, but when we intervene early, we can make a difference in children's lives. And a very big study we just did with 70,000 children in British Columbia has shown that when we intervene early, by the time children get into the elementary school years, their language improves, their writing improves, and their mathematics improves. So there's really good hope now. And these are programs which are run by many different professions. Some are nurses, some are social workers, some are psychologists. And it's very encouraging. And with your encouragement and with your direction, looking at the early years, we take a lot of direction from your teachings. The other study looks at 3-year-old children whose parents suffer from different kinds of destructive emotions. Their parents might be depressed or anxious. Many of those children also become depressed or anxious. But we have found that when we intervene with good quality programs, we can lower the amount of depression. We can lower the amount of anxiety for those children. And I'd love to give you more details of the studies, but those are just the main points. The question I'm thinking about now is, when I look at all these different programs and all the people who work so hard with children, and I know we don't have time for a lot of questions and answers, but maybe a question I can give to the whole community here today is, I'm beginning to form the impression that when somebody works with a young child, it could be a nurse or a social worker, psychologist, that work really is a spiritual discipline. Because when you work with a young child, you have to be mindful, you have to listen very carefully to the child, you have to be very compassionate. I once asked one of my teachers, what's the most important part of working with a young child? And very quickly he said, you must listen to the child. But I pushed him. I said, what if listening doesn't work? And he thought about that and said, Hillel, you have to listen more loudly. And so I'm trying to think as well, as a spiritual discipline, how I can listen more loudly to the children and the teachers of young children. Thank you for coming here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillel. We're now going to Lynn, who's in the Department of Psychology, where she holds a Canada Research Chair in developmental psychology. And Kylie, as I was thinking about your position on this panel and what you'd be talking about, I had an insight. We're talking about educating the heart. And really, the work that you're going to share with us in a moment brings a different perspective to this. It's listening to how the heart can educate the mind. And by using the term heart, I mean the whole physiology of the body and whatever insights that provides to the developing brain before we really have a fully developed intellect, to work with. So I'm very much looking forward to your presentation, and I know that the audience in His Holiness will enjoy your insights very much. So please.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, Your Holiness. I'm so honored to be here and to tell you a little bit about my work. It seems to me that fundamental to the question of how to educate the heart is consideration of where the heart comes from, where goodness begins. And so I'd like to tell you about two studies that we've done that suggest that human infants and toddlers are already demonstrating some of the signatures of morality that we expect of older children and adults. First, I want to tell you about toddlers' generosity. So we're probably all familiar with the idea that toddlers are not generous, that they're...
You're talking about what age it would be easy to say, because toddlers is a term.
Under two. So we think of very young children as interested in themselves, in their own needs and desires. So without denying that that's true, I want to show you one of our recent studies in which we found that young children are not only willing to share their stuff with others, that it actually makes them happy to do so. So to measure how happy toddlers are, we simply code smiling and frowning. And in one stage of an interaction, we give them a bunch of treats, food, and we see how happy they are. In another stage, we ask them to be generous, to give their stuff away, and we see how happy they are. And then finally, we ask them to give again, but it's not theirs to begin with. So this is sort of free giving. They give someone else's stuff away. So they can still play the game, but they don't have to give up their own stuff. Okay, so I'll show you a toddler here participating in the experiment so you can see how it's going.
You can see on the screen at the back here.
So first we introduce them to the recipient.
Now I want you to meet my friend Monkey. Hello. Do you want to say hello? No? Can I have Monkey back? Hello. We're going to play a game.
She didn't want to give up Monkey. Now she's going to receive treats.
But both you and Monkey don't have any treats. Oh no. You don't have any treats and neither does Monkey. That's right. But look, I found even more treats and I'm going to give them all to you. Peace.
So here we're going to ask her to give to Monkey.
But, I don't see any more treats. Will you give one to Monkey?
No.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Ooh, yum, 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 yum.
Older than me.
Now we'll have her give again, but this isn't her treat, so it didn't cost her anything.
And look, I found one more treat. Will you give it to Monkey?
Yeah.
Ooh, yum, 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 yum.
Okay, so if toddlers are inherently selfish, you might expect them to be happiest when we give them food, and least happy when we ask them to give it back, when we ask them to give it away. This is actually exactly the opposite of what we found. We found that toddlers are happiest when they give away their food, happier than when they receive food, and happier than when they give away someone else's food, as though the act of generosity, giving their own stuff away, is benefiting them. So this is consistent with work suggesting that giving to charity and helping others makes adults feel good, and suggests that even the very earliest nice behaviors.
So His Holiness is thinking in terms of statistics. So you have only one child there. So if you were, say, for example, so if you have. So he was asking, for example, if you do this experiment on 10, on an average.
Yeah, so we've done this experiment on hundreds of children now.
Yes. So majority?
Yes.
Majority like that?
Yes, yes. And even we've done it in different cultures around the world, and same effects. Even when, for instance, the children don't have nearly as much stuff themselves. So it might be more costly for them to give it away. Even those children show happiness after doing that.
So Kimberly talked about the socioeconomic status difference variability. So has that been taken into account, and does it show any difference?
Yes, so we've done this study with children in Vanuatu who they have very few possessions. There's even not as strong a sense of ownership. It's much more collectivist. So the children don't have their own stuff at all, and those children show the same effect. They are happy when giving.
What about the richer social economic status?
So the children here in Vancouver are of much higher socioeconomic status, and they show the same. But we haven't been able to look at differences amongst those. That would be a great next step. So the next set of studies I want to tell you about are with even younger children, with infants in just a few months old. And they're not able yet to give or to help or to do anything like that. So what we do is we show them puppet shows where others are being helpful or unhelpful, and see whether they themselves, even when they're just a few months old, like the helpful characters over the unhelpful characters. So I'll show you some of these studies here. So a character is going to try to get up a hill.
His Holiness has seen this before.
So the yellow character helps him up the hill. Now he'll try again. And the blue character pushes him down the hill. Now we have infants choose between the characters. So she watched the show. And we see which one they go for. Here's another baby.
Play with what?
And we also switch. We switch which does what.
That one?
So when the square helps, they like the square. Here's another study we've done with. This character is going to try to open the box. That guy helped him open the box. This one will be mean. And then this little girl who just watched the show is going to choose between them. She looks back and forth. this is the last show, and this one will be with just a 3-month-old infant. He loses his ball. That guy gives the ball to him. Stole the ball away. So 3-month-old infants actually are too young to reach. They can't reach yet. So we have them just look back and forth between the puppets. And we see which one they look more at. And what we find is, we've done this on this one, probably near 1,000 infants have participated in these studies. And a very high percentage, 80, 90% of infants, when they see these shows, prefer the nice one. And what we find is that even the 3-month-olds, so 3-month-olds are still sleeping most of the time, they show just as strong a tendency to prefer the nice puppets as do infants 6 months later. So what this suggests to us is that really early in life, that in some sense, liking niceness and appreciating when others are being helpful and generous is some part of infants' nature, that they sort of come into the world already noticing this kind of dimension. So when we think about what this means for educating the heart, I think what it means is that very, very young humans are already sensitive to goodness, and they like it when others try to help each other. They don't like it when others harm each other. They themselves enjoy being helpful and compassionate and good. And so I think we need to think about, the very earliest that we can help children practice this kind of stuff. They like doing it. So giving them opportunities to see these kinds of behaviors in their lives, engage in these kinds of behaviors, not asking them to give away their favorite toy, but saying, here, share your stuff with others, and maybe because they like it, it'll become more regular part of their development. And that we can do that not in the first, years in preschool, et cetera, but we can even do it when they're infants. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Kylie. I think you were showing His Holiness there exactly the kind of science and evidence that he's looking for. Genuinely innovative science. I was thinking about how interdisciplinary it is just to take theater, as you do, and bring it into psychology so that you can actually probe the mind of a very young child and come up with these really remarkable insights. So thank you very much. Finally, it's my pleasure to introduce John Helliwell, who is going to provide some oversight to the discussions that we've just had. John is a senior fellow of the Canadian Institute of Advanced Research. He also is a very distinguished economist, has written over 250 papers, I found out, John. But when I looked at the titles, I see you as an economist who actually really justifies economics being part of the social sciences with your interest in well-being, rather than some esoteric branch of mathematics. So I'm delighted that you're here to be able to bring that lens of social justice, the implications of policy to the well-being of a society, and share your thoughts and observations on the discussion we've just had.
Thank you, Tony. Your Holiness, in the 10 years since you have seen science at British Columbia first, at UBC first, there have been enormous strides, and you're seeing some of the evidence of that from the research reported this morning. When you spoke of directing your mother in the field, it made me think of the influence you are having on modern scientists. Your compassion, your heart is infecting modern science, and you can see that happening. Many of us understand that in order to educate the heart, you must first understand the heart. And that is what you spoke of this morning. You will see our research we talked about this morning is all about small children. But there is a revolution happening in all the social sciences and the human sciences and the caring professions, that we are thinking less about repairing damage and stopping bad things, and thinking more about creating joy and opening doors and making connections and being better humans. You will see how that came in each of the discussions. Kim, first of all, said almost in surprise, but you know it shouldn't have been surprise, that there are very small children in materially very poor surroundings who are very happy. You were happier and knew you were happier than the child of the rash. We are only now we are only now with our data learning a lesson that you learned a long time ago. But when we learn it, we look over our shoulders and we feel you pulling our ears. And thank you for that. Now, Hillel raised a very important point that turns up everywhere when we now look at people more seriously, when we try to understand the heart. We find out for the people who care, the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, the social workers, the people in the street, the people who are doing things for others are happier than the ones who are receiving. And that is a fundamental truth. And then we turned to Kylie's research. And it's a very hopeful piece of research she has shown. I know of no research prior to hers which has shown so convincingly how generosity is built into the human spirit. The heart comes ready to give. The heart comes wanting to give. And the critical feature of early childhood development is to develop those powers, to save that generosity. That kind of research has changed much thinking in early childhood development and in teaching more generally, that we should be not only enabling positive outcomes and not just stopping harassment, stopping bullying, stopping illness, but creating joy, creating happiness. So that Kim was telling me that under your influence, a large part, the center now is regularly asking children themselves how happy they are with their lives, and using that, not somebody looking at them and saying, well, that ought to be good for you, it's spinach. And we now have evidence from all over the world of these kinds of evaluations of people's own lives, and they show exactly what you heard this morning, that the material life is not the source of happiness. The source of happiness is just what you described. It is the chance to give, the chance to connect, and to be human with others. That humans are social and they are pro-social.
That's right.
So thank you for your inspiration to us. Do you have any, we have been very listening to you over the past years. Can you give us some extra new advice about where we should go in our research with small children and how they should be treated.
굉장히 성장해 계세요. I think you already carry wonderful sort of research work. Wonderful, thank you. Since many years, I have two questions. Still, I have not yet received any sort of answer. One, in Hawaii or some other places, I express, the turtle, the big turtle, you see, the mother lay down, egg, then buried, then mother left. There's no chance to
meet with the mother.
Meet. Because there's no need. The young turtle and they are gone there.
Hatching the egg, yeah.
Then they themselves, you see, manage for survival. So that's the biological sort of factor. So the mother kept or make some sign. Then after this, youngster come out, then put together and watch whether they have the affection each other or not. So far, I think nobody has done that. I think nobody has
done the experiment.
So then this shows we human beings, as we mentioned, a social animal. And furthermore, our life in early period, survival of the child entirely depend on someone else's affection, someone else's care. That's nature. Whether God creates or karma creates, that doesn't matter. But that's a fact. So, you see, this young infant, biologically, they already equipped the kasota. The
ability to appreciate.
Taking care of that. And in this case, you see, without sort of feeling same human being, but some other sort of kasota, life sort of. Even then, you see, have this sort of feeling, helping, like that. So then the turtle case, if you see no sign of showing affection from their youngster side to mother side to the child, then it is quite clear this is a biological factor now. Mm-hmm. This is one. So next visit. Any turtles this area? No. That kind. Actually, I mentioned, to one occasion in Hawaii, there are that kind of turtles. So this is easy to carry that kind of experiment. But nobody.
There are two pieces of.
Then another is a question. When my mood good, then I give blood to mosquito. Provided quite sure no malaria. Then looks the mosquito enjoy blood. And then the whole body become red, and then a few drops.
There's some kind of bubbles, yeah.
Then fly. No sign of appreciation. Dogs, other animal, and birds, if we feed them sincerely, they show appreciation. So the brain sites up to which level have the ability to show appreciation. One time in Oxford University, my talk, and in front, some professors of Oxford University, old Englishmen, very serious sort of dignified, yes, dignified. I put this question, nobody answer. So still, my curiosity, what size this brain have the ability? So some connection, appreciation and affection. I think these the
very connected to each other. Yeah.
So that I just want to say to share with you. So another field of research.
Thank you so much. As always, your thoughts are inspiring, and you can bet your boots there will be some answers.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John.
I want to share many young people here. Usually, I sort of believe the generation of 20th century and generation of 21st century. I think between, I think. You and me and you, I think you also, maybe, I don't know. So the person whose age below 30, 20, is the generation of 21st century. Above that, generation of 20th century. So now our century gone. And look back our century. Although it's a lot of wonderful sort of innovation or finding or development. Wonderful, wonderful century. But at the same time, that 20th century becomes century of violence. Over 200 millions of people killed. If that was the immense sort of killing, violence, really brought new shape of this world. And then some people may say, immense violence, but brought some good result. That's not the case. Beginning of 21st century, this really awful sort of event, killing, even in the name of religion. These are, I feel, symptom of the negligence of past mistake, 20th century, and also wrong sort of thinking.
Way of thinking.
Way of thinking. You see, you can achieve your victory through violence. The defeat of your enemy is your victory. That century-old sort of thinking. In modern time, every continent, heavily interdependent. That within the continent, different countries, interdependence. That's the reality. East need to West, West need East. Similarly, South, North, like that. And then environment issue. It's entire humanity facing these problems. So thinking, my nation, my continent, my religious follower, that's how to date it. Now we must think. Humanity, 7 billion human beings. So past 20th century's generation, including myself, we created a lot of problem on this planet. Now, who is going to solve that? The generation of 21st century. It is quite marvelous. We create only problem. Now you have to solve this problem. So this is Kasota, not right time to Kasota.
Take it easy. Take it, relax and take it easy.
Relax. Or you see, thinking, simply follow the old way of thinking. So the Kasota division, we and they, and ultimately extreme self-centered attitude. Now, that is the source of problem. So we now, the generation of the 21st century, must think 7 billion human beings, and the whole world. So please, the generation of the 21st century, now please think wide away. The reality, world happy, peaceful, individual get peaceful life, happy life. World, some difficult situation, individual cannot escape. So for your own personal interest or selfish interest, you have to take care about the world. So that I want to share. So while you are making effort to create a better world, please don't blame on us. the generation of 20th century. If we make attempt now, within this century, end of this century, could be more peaceful. So life, even in the health, I can get some permission, visit world 1 week or 2 weeks. Then we'll watch you. Whether the 21st century's people really, because they carry sensible work or not. If not, then when I return to hell again, I will report. The concerned hell, please create more place, more area, so more people will come.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank you for many things. Thank you for creating this opportunity to allow us to bring a hall full of students and some 1 or 2 people from the 20th century to hear you give us really our marching orders as to what we should be focusing on as we educate ourselves throughout life to build a better world for the future. Everyone, I think, has heard your message so clearly today. We may even have to give you a second honorary doctorate because it was very profound. But in all seriousness, this was a wonderful, wonderful occasion for UBC. You're welcome back anytime to engage with the scientists. I'm from the Brain Research Center. You're now an honorary neuroscientist. So, and I'm sure you're an honorary physicist as well. So we hope there'll be many, many other occasions, in all seriousness, for you to come and join us. You have a lot to say as a scientist yourself. And so thank you for giving us this moment with you, taking time out of your busy schedule, and I think also inspiring the students here to work a little bit harder and really make a difference as they go forward in their careers. So thank you so much, and thank you to the panel, and thank you most of all to the audience. I think we've had a very special morning, and thank you again for coming.